After caring for my paralyzed sister for 8 years, I overheard her tell her boyfriend she's been faking it to avoid work. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And please show us some love with a like. And comment below to let us know where you're tuning in from. The morning light filtered through heavy curtains as she adjusted the pillows behind her sister's head for the 3rd time. 8 years of this routine had carved deep lines around her eyes, premature gray threading through her dark hair like silver warnings of a youth sacrificed. Her back ached constantly now, a permanent reminder of countless transfers from bed to wheelchair, wheelchair to bath, bath to bed. "Matilda, you're hurting me," came the familiar whine from the hospital bed that dominated their living room. The same tone that had echoed through their cramped apartment every single day since the accident that changed everything. She bit back her frustration, forcing her voice to remain gentle. "Sorry, Lena. Let me fix that." Her calloused hands, once soft and manicured, now permanently stained with medicinal creams and antiseptics, carefully repositioned the pillows. At 32, Matilda had become more nurse than sister, more caregiver than woman. The apartment felt smaller each day, cluttered with medical equipment that insurance barely covered. Oxygen tanks stood like silent sentinels in corners, while the wheelchair, expensive and necessary, took up precious space in their already cramped quarters. Matilda's own bedroom had been converted into a makeshift physical therapy room years ago, forcing her to sleep on a pull-out couch that left her spine screaming every morning. "I need my medication," Lena demanded, her voice sharp despite her supposed weakness. At 28, she should have been building her own life, but instead lay dependent, requiring Matilda's constant attention. Matilda reached for the pill organizer, its compartments precisely labeled for morning, noon, and night. Each prescription cost more than most people's rent, draining Matilda's bank account monthly. She'd given up her dreams of nursing school, her relationship with David, even her social life, all sacrificed on the altar of sisterly duty. As she handed over the pills, Matilda caught her reflection in the bedroom mirror. The woman staring back looked defeated, hollow, a ghost of who she used to be. 3 months later, everything changed when Vince knocked on their door. Tall, handsome, with kind eyes and an easy smile, he claimed to be a physical therapist referred by Lena's doctor. Matilda felt something flutter in her chest, a feeling she'd forgotten existed. "I specialize in long-term paralysis cases," Vince explained, his deep voice filling their small living room. "I believe I can help Lena regain some mobility." His confidence was infectious, and for the first time in years, Matilda felt hope blooming in her chest like a flower after winter. Lena's reaction was immediate and violent. "I don't need another therapist. They all hurt me," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. But Vince was patient, gentle, explaining his techniques with scientific precision. Matilda found herself hanging on his every word, desperate for any promise of improvement. Over the following weeks, Vince became a regular fixture in their home. He arrived every Tuesday and Thursday, bringing specialized equipment and an optimism that Matilda had forgotten was possible. During sessions, he would catch Matilda's eye and smile, sending warmth through her exhausted body. "You've been carrying this burden alone for too long," he told her one afternoon as Lena rested. They sat in the kitchen sharing coffee, a simple pleasure Matilda had almost forgotten. "You deserve a life too, Matilda. You deserve happiness." His words hit her like lightning. When was the last time someone had considered her needs, her desires, her dreams that had been buried under 8 years of caregiving? "I can't abandon her," Matilda whispered, but even as she spoke, she felt the walls she'd built around her heart beginning to crack. Vince reached across the table, his warm hand covering hers. "Taking care of yourself isn't abandonment. It's survival." That night, Matilda stared at the ceiling of her pull-out couch, Vince's words echoing in her mind. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a different life. Vince's visits became the highlight of Matilda's week. During Lena's therapy sessions, Matilda would hover nearby, ostensibly helping but really just wanting to be close to him. His presence brought light into their dark apartment, hope into their hopeless routine. But something strange began happening. Lena, who had initially resisted Vince's treatments with violent objections, started looking forward to his visits. She would spend hours preparing, doing her hair, applying makeup, choosing her prettiest pajamas. The transformation was remarkable and unsettling. "She seems Different when you're here, Matilda mentioned to Vince one afternoon as they watched Lena laughing at his jokes. For someone supposedly paralyzed from the waist down, Lena seemed remarkably animated, her eyes bright and flirtatious. Vince frowned, his professional demeanor flickering. Some patients develop attachments to their caregivers. It's normal. But his voice carried an edge Matilda had never heard before. That evening, after Vince left, Matilda confronted her sister. Lena, you seem to be responding well to the therapy. Dr. Patterson should know about your progress. Lena's face immediately shuttered, the brightness vanishing like a light switch being flipped. I'm not better, Matilda. Don't you dare tell anyone I am. I hurt all the time. Vince just helps me forget the pain temporarily. Something cold settled in Matilda's stomach. She'd been caring for Lena for 8 years, knew every expression, every tone of voice. The woman who'd been laughing and animated minutes before had transformed back into the helpless invalid with suspicious speed. That night, Matilda couldn't sleep. She replayed the day's events, analyzing every interaction, every micro-expression. Lena's laughter had been genuine, her movements fluid and natural. The contrast between that woman and the one who claimed constant agony was jarring. Matilda stood at her sister's bedside, watching Lena sleep peacefully. No grimaces of pain, no restless movement that had characterized her nights for years. Just peaceful, untroubled sleep. For the first time, doubt crept into Matilda's mind like poison. Matilda's suspicions grew stronger with each passing day. She began watching Lena with new eyes, cataloging inconsistencies that she'd previously attributed to good days versus bad days. The way Lena's supposed muscle spasms only occurred when Matilda was watching. How her pain levels mysteriously decreased whenever Vince visited. Determined to uncover the truth, Matilda installed a small camera in the living room while Lena slept. She told herself it was for security purposes, but her heart hammered with guilty knowledge of her real intentions. The footage from the first day revealed nothing unusual. Lena lay in bed, occasionally shifting position, reading magazines, watching television. Matilda almost felt relieved. Maybe her suspicions were just the product of 8 years of stress and exhaustion. But on the third day, the camera captured something that made Matilda's blood run cold. At 2:17 p.m., while Matilda was at the grocery store, Lena sat up in bed. Not the careful, assisted movement Matilda helped her with daily, but a fluid, natural motion. Lena swung her legs over the side of the bed, legs that supposedly had no feeling, no movement, and stood up. Matilda's hands trembled as she watched her sister walk across the room with perfect balance, stretching her arms above her head, rotating her neck like someone working out morning stiffness. Lena walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and made herself a sandwich, all while humming contentedly. The timestamp showed Lena had been walking around for nearly an hour before returning to bed, carefully positioning herself exactly as Matilda had left her. Matilda felt vomit rising in her throat. 8 years. 8 years of sacrifice, of giving up everything, of caring for someone who didn't need care. 8 years of lies. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Matilda, I'm having a bad day. Can you come home early? I need my pain medication. Matilda stared at the message, then back at the video of her sister dancing around their apartment just hours before. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Every dream she'd abandoned, every relationship she'd sacrificed, every piece of herself she'd given up. All for a lie. Her hands shook as she typed back, on my way home. But first she had calls to make. Matilda sat in her car outside their apartment building for 20 minutes, trying to process the magnitude of her sister's deception. 8 years of her life stolen by lies. 8 years of playing nursemaid to someone who could walk, could work, could live independently. The rage building inside her was unlike anything she'd ever experienced. It started as a cold knot in her stomach and spread through her body like wildfire, consuming reason and leaving only raw, primitive fury. When she finally entered the apartment, Lena was lying in bed exactly as the camera had shown her positioning herself, wearing the same pained expression she'd perfected over nearly a decade. Matilda, thank God you're home, Lena whimpered, reaching out with trembling hands. The pain is so bad today. I think I need to go to the hospital. Matilda stood frozen in the doorway, staring at this stranger who wore her sister's face but had stolen her life. Really? The pain is bad. Yes, Lena gasped dramatically. It feels like fire shooting up my spine. Please get my medication. Interesting, Matilda said, her voice deadly calm. Because according to this camera footage, you were walking around just fine 3 hours ago. The color drained from Lena's face so quickly that Matilda thought she might actually pass out. For a moment, neither sister spoke. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, 8 years of lies hanging in the air like smoke. Matilda, I can explain, Lena started, but Matilda cut her off. Explain what? How you've been faking paralysis for 8 years. How you've let me sacrifice everything, my career, my relationships, my entire life, to take care of you when you didn't need care. Matilda's voice rose with each word until she was screaming. Explain how you've stolen 8 years of my life. Lena began crying, but even her tears looked calculated now. You don't understand. I was scared. Scared of what? Getting a job? Being responsible for yourself? Living like an adult? Matilda felt something break inside her chest, something that could never be repaired. Lena's tears stopped as quickly as they'd started, replaced by a cold defensiveness Matilda had never seen before. It was like watching a mask fall away, revealing the person her sister had truly become. You want the truth? Lena's voice lost all traces of weakness. Fine. Yes, I've been faking it. But you have no idea what my life was like before the accident. Matilda stared at her sister, this stranger who had manipulated her for nearly a decade. What are you talking about? I was failing at everything, Matilda. I got fired from 3 jobs in 6 months. I was about to be evicted. I owed money to people who don't accept late payments. Lena sat up fully now, no longer bothering to maintain her act. Then the accident happened and suddenly I had a solution to all my problems. Solution. Matilda's voice was barely a whisper. You turned me into your slave for 8 years because you couldn't handle responsibility? Don't be so dramatic, Lena snapped. You were always the responsible one, the caregiver. I just gave you a purpose. Before this, what were you doing with your life? Working dead-end jobs, dating losers. At least taking care of me gave your existence meaning. The cruelty of those words hit Matilda like a physical blow. Gave my existence meaning? I gave up nursing school. I gave up David. I gave up everything. David was a loser who would have left you anyway. And nursing school? Please. You would have dropped out like everything else you started. Lena's voice was venomous now, years of hidden resentment pouring out. I did you a favor, Matilda. I made your pathetic life matter. Matilda felt the room spinning around her. This wasn't grief or shock anymore. This was something much darker. Get out, she whispered. What? Get out of my apartment. Now. Matilda's voice grew stronger with each word. Walk out of here on those legs that work perfectly fine and never come back. Lena laughed, a sound completely devoid of warmth. This is my apartment too. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. You're an adult who can walk. Figure it out. But Lena wasn't finished destroying Matilda's world. You think you can just throw me out? After 8 years of playing the devoted sister? What happens when people find out you abandoned your paralyzed sister? Matilda felt ice forming in her veins. What are you talking about? Everyone knows you as the saint who sacrificed everything for her disabled sister. Your neighbors, your few remaining friends, are family. What do you think they'll say when I tell them you kicked me out for having one good day? Lena's smile was predatory now. Who's going to believe that I've been faking this whole time? I have medical records, Matilda. 8 years of doctor visits, prescriptions, disability benefits. The manipulation was breathtaking in its calculated cruelty. Matilda realized her sister had been planning this conversation, preparing for the day her lies might be discovered. You look like a monster, Lena continued. The sister who abandoned her disabled sibling the moment caregiving became inconvenient. Your reputation, your job prospects, your entire social life. I'll destroy all of it. Matilda stared at this woman who shared her DNA but possessed the soul of a stranger. You would do that? After everything I've done for you? Everything you've done? Matilda, wake up. You haven't done anything for me. You've been doing it for yourself, for your image as the good sister, the martyr. Don't pretend your motives were pure. I loved you, Matilda whispered, and even as she said it, she realized she was using past tense. Love. Lena laughed again. You loved the idea of being needed. You loved being the victim everyone pitied and admired. I just gave you the perfect excuse to never grow up, never take risks, never build a real life. Matilda felt something die inside her chest, the last vestiges of the sister she thought she knew. So here's what's going to happen, Lena continued, settling back into her hospital bed like a queen on her throne. Nothing changes. You keep taking care of me and I'll keep being your purpose in life. We both get what we want. Matilda looked at her sister and saw a stranger wearing a familiar face. That night, Matilda couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think beyond the crushing weight of betrayal. She sat on her pull-out couch, staring at the wall, trying to figure out how to extract herself from 8 years of lies without destroying what little remained of her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vince. "Can we talk? It's important." Matilda almost ignored it. She couldn't handle another revelation, another person she trusted turning out to be something else entirely. But something in his tone made her respond, "Okay." They met at a diner across town, far from their neighborhood where curious eyes might see them together. Vince looked haggard, like he hadn't slept either. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by something that looked like guilt. "Matilda, I have to tell you something about Lena," he began, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he wasn't drinking. "Something I should have told you weeks ago." Matilda's stomach dropped. "What now?" "I'm not actually a physical therapist." The words hung between them like a death sentence. "I'm a private investigator. Your Aunt Diane hired me." Matilda felt the world tilt sideways. "What are you talking about?" Diane suspected Lena was faking her paralysis. She'd noticed inconsistencies during family visits, small things that didn't add up. "She hired me to investigate, but she made me promise not to tell you until I had proof." "Proof?" Matilda's voice was barely audible. Vince pulled out his phone, scrolling through videos. "I've been recording our sessions. Look at this from last week." The video showed Lena during one of their therapy sessions. But instead of the painful, limited movements she usually displayed, Lena was moving her legs naturally, even standing briefly when she thought Vince wasn't looking. "She's been trying to seduce me for weeks," Vince continued, "thinking that if she could get me on her side, I'd stop investigating. She doesn't know I've been building a case against her." Matilda stared at the screen, watching her sister manipulate yet another person. "How long have you known?" "I suspected from day one. But I needed evidence, and I needed to understand the full scope of her deception." Vince leaned forward. "Matilda, she's been collecting disability benefits for 8 years. That's federal fraud. She could go to prison." Matilda returned home that night armed with knowledge that felt like weapons. Vince had given her copies of everything: videos, photographs, documented evidence of Lena's mobility and manipulation. The case against her sister was airtight, devastating, and would likely result in criminal charges. But as Matilda sat in their apartment, listening to Lena breathe peacefully in her hospital bed, she realized that destroying her sister wouldn't heal the 8 years of stolen life. It wouldn't bring back her relationship with David, her dreams of nursing school, or the woman she might have become. "I know you're awake," Lena said from across the room. "You're breathing differently." Matilda didn't respond immediately. She was trying to decide who she wanted to be in this moment, the victim or the survivor. "Vince told me everything," Matilda finally said. The silence that followed was electric with tension. Matilda could hear Lena's breathing change, becoming rapid and shallow. "Told you what?" Lena's voice was carefully controlled. "That he's a private investigator. That Aunt Diane hired him. That he has videos of you walking, standing, moving around when you think no one's watching." Matilda's voice was steady now, anchored by purpose. "That you've been committing federal fraud for 8 years. Lena sat up in bed. Not the careful, assisted movement she usually required, but a sharp, defensive motion. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can." Matilda held up Vince's phone. "Hours of video evidence. Medical records that don't match your actual capabilities. Financial records showing disability payments you weren't entitled to receive." For the first time in 8 years, Matilda saw genuine fear in her sister's eyes. "Matilda, please," Lena's voice cracked. "I'm your sister. You can't turn me in. They'll send me to prison. You should have thought about that before you stole 8 years of my life." Matilda stood up from the couch, and for the first time in years she felt powerful. She felt like herself again. "You have 24 hours to leave my apartment. After that, I'm calling the authorities." The next morning, Matilda woke to find Lena gone. The hospital bed was empty, medical equipment abandoned, and the apartment felt different, lighter somehow, as if a malevolent presence had finally lifted. Matilda allowed herself a moment of relief before reality set in. Lena wouldn't disappear quietly. She was too calculating, too desperate, and too accustomed to manipulation to simply accept defeat. Matilda's suspicions proved correct when her phone started ringing at 9 a.m. First, her mother. "Matilda, Lena called me crying. She says you've abandoned her? That you're claiming she's been faking her paralysis? How could you do this to your sister?" Then Aunt Diane, Uncle Jerome, her cousin Shanice. Lena had orchestrated a campaign of character assassination, painting Matilda as the cruel sister who'd snapped under pressure and created elaborate fantasies to justify abandoning her disabled sibling. "She's been calling everyone in the family," Matilda's mother continued. "She's devastated, Matilda. She says you've been acting strange for weeks, talking about videos that don't exist, claiming she can walk. Baby, I think you might be having some kind of breakdown." Matilda felt the walls closing in. Lena's manipulation was masterful. She'd positioned herself as the victim and Matilda as the unstable caregiver who'd finally cracked. Without the video evidence, it was Lena's word against Matilda's, and Lena had 8 years of medical records and disability benefits to support her claims. "Mama, she's been lying to all of us. I have proof." "Proof? Matilda, honey, you sound paranoid. When's the last time you had a real vacation? Maybe you need to talk to someone, get some help dealing with the stress." Matilda realized with growing horror that Lena had anticipated this scenario and prepared accordingly. She'd spent years building a network of sympathy and support while positioning Matilda as the unstable, overwhelmed caregiver. By noon, Matilda had received 17 calls from family members, each more concerned about her mental state than the last. Lena had painted her as delusional, stressed to the breaking point, and possibly dangerous. Matilda called Vince, desperate for support, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Matilda spent the day fielding calls from concerned relatives, each conversation eroding her credibility further. Lena had been thorough in her character assassination, providing specific details about Matilda's supposed breakdown, claims that she'd been talking to herself, showing signs of paranoia, and becoming increasingly unstable. By evening, Matilda realized she was fighting a battle Lena had been preparing for years. Every family gathering where Lena had subtly mentioned Matilda's stress levels, every comment about how difficult caregiving had become, every suggestion that Matilda seemed overwhelmed, it had all been preparation for this moment. But Matilda had underestimated her own strength. 8 years of sacrifice had built resilience she didn't know she possessed. She'd learned to be strategic, patient, and thorough, skills Lena had inadvertently taught her. Matilda called Aunt Diane first. "I need you to listen to me carefully. Vince isn't just a physical therapist. He's a private investigator you hired to investigate Lena." The silence on the other end stretched for long moments. "How did you?" "He told me everything. About the videos, the evidence, the federal fraud charges she's facing." "Diane, you knew she was faking." "I suspected," Diane admitted quietly. "But I needed proof before I could risk destroying the family." "The family's already destroyed." Lena saw to that. Matilda's voice was steady now, strengthened by purpose. "But we can still save what's left. We can still tell the truth." Over the next hour, Matilda and Diane developed a plan. Diane would call a family meeting for the following evening, claiming she had important information about Lena's condition. Vince would present his evidence to everyone at once, making it impossible for Lena to control the narrative. "She won't come," Diane warned. "If she knows we have evidence, she'll run." "Let her run," Matilda replied. "She can't hide from federal fraud charges forever." That night, Matilda slept on her pull-out couch for the last time. Tomorrow, regardless of the outcome, her old life would end. The question was whether she'd have the strength to build a new one. As she drifted off to sleep, Matilda allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't defined by Lena's lies, a future where she could be herself again. The next evening, Matilda's family gathered in Aunt Diane's living room for what they believed would be an intervention. Matilda could see the pity in their eyes, the way they spoke to her in gentle, careful tones reserved for people they thought were having mental breakdowns. "Matilda, we love you," her mother began, sitting beside her on the sofa. but we're worried about the stress you've been under. Maybe it's time to consider getting Lena more professional care so you can focus on your own healing." Matilda almost laughed at the irony. After 8 years of sacrifice, her family was finally suggesting she prioritize her own needs. But only because they thought she was crazy. "Before we continue," Diane interjected, "there's someone I'd like you all to meet." She gestured toward the door as Vince entered, carrying a laptop and several folders. Lena, who had been playing the role of confused invalid to perfection, went rigid when she saw him. "What's he doing here?" "This is Vince Johnson," Diane announced. "He's a private investigator I hired to look into some concerns I had about Lena's condition." The room erupted in shocked voices, but Vince calmly set up his laptop and began playing the videos. The first showed Lena walking around Matilda's apartment, dancing to music, preparing meals, moving with perfect mobility and coordination. Matilda watched her family's faces as the truth unfolded before them. Shock, disbelief, then slowly dawning understanding. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth. Uncle Jerome cursed under his breath, and Cousin Shanice stared at the screen in horror. "This footage was taken over the past 3 months," Vince explained professionally. "Ms. Washington has been collecting disability benefits while maintaining full mobility and engaging in activities inconsistent with her claimed paralysis." "That's not me," Lena insisted desperately. "Those videos are fake. He's been working with Matilda to frame me because she wants to get rid of me." But the evidence was overwhelming. Medical records that showed inconsistencies, testimony from neighbors who'd seen Lena walking when Matilda wasn't home, financial records documenting 8 years of fraudulent benefit claims. Matilda's mother turned to stare at her youngest daughter, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in years. "Lena, what have you done?" 6 months later, Matilda stood in the doorway of her empty apartment, keys in hand, ready to start over. Lena had pled guilty to federal fraud charges and received a 2-year prison sentence, though she'd likely serve less than 18 months. The disability benefits had been terminated, and she owed substantial restitution to the government. The family had fractured in the aftermath. Some relatives blamed Matilda for pursuing charges against her sister, arguing that family problems should be handled privately. Others were horrified by the depth of Lena's deception and manipulation. Matilda had learned to live with both reactions. Her relationship with her mother was still strained but improving. "I should have seen it," her mother had said through tears during one of their difficult conversations. "I should have protected you from carrying that burden alone." Matilda had enrolled in online nursing classes, finally pursuing the dream she'd abandoned 8 years earlier. She'd also started therapy, working through the complex emotions of loving someone who had betrayed her so completely. Vince had become a genuine friend, not the romantic relationship her isolated heart had briefly imagined, but something more valuable. A person who understood what she'd endured and respected her strength in surviving it. The apartment felt enormous without the medical equipment, without the hospital bed that had dominated their living space for nearly a decade. Matilda had painted the walls, bought new furniture, and slowly transformed the space into something that reflected who she was, not who she'd been forced to become. Her phone buzzed with a text from David, her ex-boyfriend, who'd reached out after hearing the full story from mutual friends. "Would you like to have dinner sometime? I'd love to catch up." Matilda smiled, looking around her newly reclaimed life. For the first time in 8 years, she had choices. She could say yes or no based on what she wanted, not what someone else needed from her. She typed back, "I'd like that." As she locked the apartment door for the final time, Matilda realized that Lena's cruelest lie wasn't about her paralysis. It was convincing Matilda that sacrifice and self-destruction were the same as love. But Matilda had learned the difference, and that knowledge had set her free. If you're just tuning in, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. And please show us some love with a like. And comment below to let us know where you're tuning in from.